What does your face say about your health? Let's find out. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Ask Dr. Pickel Show. And today we're going to talk about facial analysis. How does your face relate to your health? Now, in Chinese medicine, they've been doing this for thousands of years. So they've developed this over time, and they don't just look at the face. Now, we're just going to look at the face today, but they look at the tongue, the nails, and they kind of combine that all together to say, hey, what's wrong with this person? Now, it's not diagnostic. We cannot use this to diagnose anyone, but it does give us some information when we look at a person and their features and kind of what's going on facially. So let's go ahead and bring up an example here. All right, so here's a face we can kind of go through, and we'll go through each part of this and kind of the organs and everything that relates in. So let's start at the top with that small intestinal area. Now, what we're going to see when we see issues is we're usually going to see wrinkles, or maybe the person has always breakouts in this area like acne, or maybe they've got some discoloration of the skin, or it's always really puffy. But a lot of times you're going to see wrinkles in this area, and sometimes they'll even be wrinkles that are really all crossed up and go in different directions. And, in Chinese medicine, they might say, oh, this person's a busy thinker, or they're a worrier. But yeah, we can say that, but also we've got to say, wait, does this person have digestive issues? Do they have leaky gut? Do they have SIBO? Do they have do they have a lot of food intolerances? Every time they eat, does their bowel get inflamed and swollen and bloated? Are there certain foods that seem to bother them a lot? So we do have to look at it from that perspective. And do you need some digestive enzymes? Do you need some intestinal support to help that area? Next, let's go to the bladder. So with the bladder, you'll start to see just kind of areas out here, or maybe just skin changes a little further out to the side. Sometimes you'll see that in combination with small intestine. It'll be like, hey, we got lines all the way across. Now, there's going to be a problem here because if a person does Botox, you might not be able to read this very well. And, but the thing is once you get to kind of know this stuff, then you can start to do it in public and start to look at people's faces. You can go to parties and everybody's like, wow, how did you know that? And it's just, hey, I watched Dr. Pickel's facial analysis video. So tell them that. All right. So, but the bladder, we got to start to think if there's areas there that are problematic with the skin, we've got to say, are you maybe dehydrated? Do you not drink enough water? Number one, or do you have chronic urinary tract infections? Do you have, some other issues that affect your urinary tract? Do you have kidney issues, which that'll relate to some other things that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But yeah, definitely we've got to look at the bladder there. Next thing we're going to go to is the heart. And the heart, a couple areas out here, but also on the tip of the nose. But we'll start with these. Now, again, this could be discolorations in this area. This could be lines in this area. And especially when there's this one line that goes down on one side or both sides. In Chinese medicine, they call this the intuition line. And these are people that kind of trust their gut. But from our perspective, we got to say, wait a second, do you have a heart issue, a cardiovascular issue? Do you have a family history of heart issues? Do you have a cholesterol issue? Do you have high blood pressure? What's going on with the heart? Do you need some support to help get your cholesterol down? Do you need CoQ10 for your heart? Do you need Hawthorne? Something to help the heart out there. All right. And then after that, we're going to go to the liver. So the liver, pretty important organ. It has over 300 different functions. But if we start to see lines that go up like this, they look crinkled. Some of them will be pretty deep. Some of them are more just when people are kind of frustrated. Some of them are just constant and all the time. And then these liver lines, usually in Chinese medicine, they'll say this means you're a mean person. Well, it doesn't always have to mean that. It can mean that you maybe carry anger or you get frustrated a lot. And but from our perspective, it's like, wait a second, do you have a problem with your liver? Is your liver not detoxifying? Are there things coming into your liver that are bogging it down, like excessive hormones like estrogens? Are you consuming a lot of alcohol? And if it is, that'll be some pretty deep-seated lines for someone who has a lot of alcoholism. Sometimes if there's just one line on the side, they'll say, hey, maybe you have a family history of some alcoholism. So the liver, then we got to say, well, what can we do to support that poor liver that's having some problems? Then right towards the middle of these two, kind of between the eyebrow areas here, mainly we'll see one line that just goes straight up. Now that's the spleen line. And what does that spleen do? Well, the spleen is extremely important for immune system function. So when we see that, we've got to say, hey, wait, do you have some chronic infection? Do you have a viral infection like Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus? If some other virus, do you have some type of chronic infection, some type of autoimmune issue? What could be a factor here? Now, in Chinese medicine, the spleen is also related to obsessing or stressing. Now, what happens when stress is high? Your immune system drops. So that really kind of makes sense. And then next, if they get a line right across the nose here, and some people it'll be more when they crinkle their nose, but some people it's just a constant deep line right in that area, and that's the pancreas. So when it's the pancreas, first thing we got to think is, does this person have blood sugar issues? Do they have high blood sugar? Do they have diabetes, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, pre-diabetes? Or do they have low blood sugar? Are they hypoglycemic? And then what's another job of the pancreas? It makes digestive enzymes. So do you have digestive issues? Do you feel better when you take digestive enzymes? Do you eat food and you feel bloated or have a bunch of gas afterwards? So again, looking at that pancreas line, kind of interesting there. And then just off to the side of that, if we see people that have kind of these very dark kind of concave areas in there, it looks kind of hollowed out between their eyes and dark. Yeah, that's a sign of adrenal issues. So it's kind of a dark pitting in that area. Or sometimes the eyes will actually kind of look set back and it'll look hollow in here. And then you'll usually notice with these people that they look very emaciated, thin. They really don't gain weight very well. That's usually really low adrenal function. Maybe they'll, along with that, have like low blood pressure. Issues like that. But again, the first thing we've got to start to think with that is adrenals. Now, the other thing that'll occur often with the adrenal glands, because again, stress can affect adrenals. Any chronic inflammation affects adrenals. Blood sugar affects adrenals. So many things affect adrenals. But also on the outside of the eyes, you'll see adrenals here too. Now, what do we most commonly see on the outside of the eyes? A lot of people will know this one. Crow's feet, they call them. And yeah, it's another sign of adrenal stress. But if they've had Botox in the area, you probably won't be able to figure that out. So you may have to just look at in between the eyes. But definitely, that's a sign of that these outer eyes is also a sign of adrenal issues. And then we can look at the eyebrows here. What are those eyebrows doing? So really, now there's a lot of meanings of the eyebrows we're not going to go over, but especially if this outer third of the eyebrows starts to really fade or disappear completely, that's a sign of thyroid issues. This is a researched finding that when those areas fade, yeah, you probably have a thyroid issue, probably more low thyroid, probably or Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition where your immune system attacks your thyroid. Any of those can cause thyroid issues. Now, another thing we'll see with thyroid, if you'll notice right down there low, it's like, wait a second, thyroid's down by the thyroid also. Now, this isn't in the upper throat. It's not kind of where the Adam's apple's at. It's down there lower, and you'll see wrinkles usually across this area or folds in the skin. Another sign of thyroid issues. Can slow down metabolism, or maybe you'll see it bulging out, which could be goiter, like a goiter, where a hyperthyroidism, making too much. This is usually also where we're going to see people are saying, hey, my heart races, I can't gain weight, I'm having tons of bowel movements all the time. Yeah, that's more hyperthyroid, too much thyroid hormone. So then we're going to go to a place where a lot of people ask about under the eyes. They'll say, Dr. Pickel, I've got bags or circles or dark areas under my eyes. What the heck does that mean? Well, that's either a liver issue, a food intolerance, or kidney. So liver, we can also go back to say, hey, do you have liver issues up here? Do you have problems with the liver? Because this could easily affect this. And the liver is also involved with digestion too. But the most common one I'll see is food intolerance issues. This is where people are not digesting things well. The gut's inflamed. Something's inflamed, and that's what we have to find out. But if the gut's inflamed, you won't absorb things very well. You'll absorb the tiny molecules. The sugars and carbs will go right in. But the bigger molecules, the important stuff, the proteins, the fatty acids, the minerals, won't absorb well. So then what happens? You become deficient. You have malabsorption. So deficiency, and I'll see this sometimes in adults and children where it's really dark under the eyes here. And again, that's because of deficiency. Now, also kidneys will relate to this too. And usually where I'll see that the most is dehydration. And that's more where we'll see a lot of puffiness in the area, which means that, like, let's say you wake up in the morning and it's puffy under your eyes. Yeah, you're dehydrated. Which, are you dehydrated because you're not drinking enough water, or do you have a kidney issue or some other issue? Were you on diuretics, or we also have to look at medications when we look at these things too, to see if they're having an effect. Now, another thing that's not on here that could affect a lot of puffiness under the eyes too is, do you have chronic sinus issues? Because everything kind of drains to the eyes. There's no else for things to drain except to the eye areas, and this could cause also puffiness all the way around, which really dehydration could too. And so as far as that, I would say another thing too with kidney in Chinese medicine, like I said, fear and worry. Do we see that? Now, another thing that can happen is this upper part of the eyelid can look like it kind of droops down in some people. And that's also a sign of protein assimilation issues, meaning the gut's inflamed, you're not absorbing protein very well. So this can usually go along with food intolerances and things like that. Now, then we get to the cheeks. Still with the digestive tract, this is the stomach. So if you get a lot of breakouts there, or you got rosy cheeks all the time, or the cheeks, are starting to show some wrinkles or sagging or things like that, then this is signs of stomach issues potentially. Again, none of this is diagnostic. It's just potentials here that we're looking at. So again, when we look at that with the stomach, sometimes those lines can go all the way across. Sometimes even a rash type thing can go all the way across. And this does relate to what we call the stomach meridian. Do you have, in Chinese medicine, do you have a low acid production in your stomach? Do you have an ulcer? Do you have just stomach inflammation, gastritis? Do you have heartburn, reflux? And then finding out why. Do you have an H. pylori infection? It's kind of finding out what's going on in that stomach. And then right below that is the lungs. So sometimes you'll see people that right below their cheekbones, it looks really hollowed out, kind of darker down there. These are signs of kind of those sunken in cheeks. These are signs of lung issues. So do you have low oxygen? If you put that pulse oximeter on your finger, does it read low? Do you have asthma? Do you have other breathing issues, pneumonia? Anything respiratory will relate to that area. Even if you're a smoker, that's a common thing that you'll see, because sometimes you'll see that hollowed out in there and you'll say, oh, that person probably smokes. So that's a big potential there. And then going back to the heart at the tip of the nose. Yeah, we were kind of talking about that earlier, in that heart. A lot of times if that tip of the nose gets a little more bulbous, some people just are a little more bulbous there on the front of the nose. That means you usually have a big heart. You're very generous, or sometimes that can mean the other side too in Chinese medicine, that you've been through traumatic stress, like you've broken heart or grief or things like that. So again, those are more that Chinese medicine perspective. But of course, we're going to look at more from an organic, or is there a problem with the heart exactly? All right. And then we'll go down to the lips here. Now, the top lip is going to more represent the small intestine. So do you get a lot of sores or cracks on your top lip? This may mean also, just like up here, you can kind of put them together. Hey, is it in both areas? Do you have some type of small intestinal issue? Right above that is the stomach. Do you have stomach issues like we saw here on the cheeks? And you can kind of correlate those. Maybe the person has a lot of lines going up above that top lip. It could be stomach or small intestinal issues that could cause that. And then, of course, that bottom lip, that's more representative of large intestine. Do you get more sores there? Does it crack there? Do you have problems on that lower lip? And are you always having to put on your chapstick because it gets dry so easily? So this can be a sign of large intestine. Now, also large intestine can kind of, if it gets bad sometimes, even when a person's not smiling or face is relaxed, they'll have really deep lines right through here. And then also sometimes this inner area right next to the nose on both sides, they'll say, gosh, it's itchy right there. It's itchy on the side of my nose always, or I get a crust and it may just be one side. Yeah, you probably have candida in your large intestine. And when it comes to large intestine, we got to say, hey, what's affecting that? Do you have parasites? Do you have candida? what's affecting that gut? Is it maybe slow because you have a low thyroid issue? It's kind of examining this from all these different perspectives. And then something we can't see very well are the ears. And the ears are interesting in that on the earlobes, if you see a lot of wrinkles and lines on the earlobes, this can also be a sign of cardiovascular issues, heart issues. That's kind of textbook. That's not even just Chinese medicine. And then also on the tragus of the ear, kind of where the ear meets the jaw area here, it's just kind of that little flap right there at the front of the ear. Yeah, when that one has some wrinkles on it, or it looks like a fold on it, this can be a sign of pancreas issues also. So a lot of people are like, hey, that's kind of interesting. All right, so now that we kind of know some of these things about this, let's actually dive in and see what you guys can do. All right, so let's first take a look at Oprah. What's going on here with Oprah? Can you identify some things? Now, again, when we see these movie stars, we don't know how much cosmetic enhancement they've had. But one thing we can know with her is the eyes do look more kind of pitted, especially on the outer edges. In fact, you can just faintly see a little bit of crow's feet, and then kind of the inner eyes are sunken just a little bit. And this, again, can be a sign of adrenal exhaustion, thyroid issues. And we already know that Oprah has thyroid issues. And I'm sure over her career time, she's had a ton of stress, which can cause adrenal issues there. And then also with her, look at maybe the kind of the large forehead area. It's kind of widespread, maybe a little wider on the nose. This signifies a big heart in Chinese medicine. It means that this person is very generous. The lips are full, meaning she's very passionate, and the wide smile means she has a big personality. Again, this is all this Chinese medicine stuff, so kind of interesting there too. And then next, somebody gave me this one to put on here. I don't know her that much, but I guess her name is Diane Lane. Now she isn't really wearing any makeup, which kind of helps us out. And if we really look straight forward under her eyes, that's where we're going to start to see some things. Yeah, she's probably got some kidney issues. She may need to increase her water intake, or maybe she's got some issues with her liver or something like that. And then also we can note on her pretty easily, you can see those lines on the forehead. So we know in Chinese medicine, she's either a warrior or she's got intestinal issues. So it could be either one of those. So maybe she needs some intestinal support. And then you can really see them here on her is the crow's feet. So we definitely know she's got adrenal issues, stress issues. Who knows what she's gone through as a star. And then let's go next to someone who most of you know is this Tom Hanks. And Tom Hanks also some issues here that we can see. So first thing we want to look at, let's go down to his lower neck. Look at that. Look at those heavy, deep lines. Tom Hanks has a thyroid issue. Absolutely. And, really shows up. So he might want to get that checked out. And then these, and they're pretty heavy, deep lines. And then under his eyes, it really looks puffy. Either he's not getting enough water or minerals, or again, what is this also? This is a fear area in Chinese medicine, or he could be having sleep issues, or maybe he's got a lot of sinus congestion and it can drain under the eyes too and cause him to be puffy. Maybe he has a lymphatic issue, but again, the kidneys could play a part. Now, also right in the middle, or you see that line going up on the upward right between his nose, it kind of goes straight up. So this is a liver line. So we've got to say, Tom, do you have something going on with your liver? Is there some alcoholism or a family history of alcoholism? So another possibility there with Tom. And then look down at his chin, kind of the crest of the chin, a little more pronounced there. The thing I would ask him, because that's the reproductive area, do we have some prostate health issue? And that's something I didn't mention back on the face, is if we look at that chin in, let's say, we'll come back to that. Well, in fact, let's go straight back to that. Down in that chin area, I don't know why I skipped over that. So this is reproduction. So if you have a lot of breakouts, a lot of women will say, hey, I'm broken out on my chin. That means I have a hormonal issue. Well, they're actually right. This is a sign of hormonal, and not only just reproductive hormones, actually any hormone could correlate here in the body. I mean, not only when we think of hormones, we typically think of like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, maybe adrenal hormones, thyroid hormones. Melatonin, think about that too. That's also a hormone. So any hormones could potentially be correlated here. And I would say in men, we're going to say, hey, if they've got something going on down there, do you have a prostate issue? So it is kind of looking at all these different factors and saying, hey, what does the face show and how can we correlate that with health? And does it really mean anything or not? And then we're going to look at the nails and the tongue in future videos here. But next, I'd like you to watch this next video because I think you'll like it. And hopefully you enjoyed facial analysis. God bless, and I will see you next time.